The biggest problem with traditional ankle mobility drills is that most people are just trying to jam their knee as far forward as they can over their toe without respecting what actually needs to happen within the foot to accomplish that ankle dorsiflexion and foot pronation. While there is value and people do see improvements from these traditional approaches, I think a little bit more attention to what's happening within the foot as we do them can go a long way and lead to even more significantly better results. You can jam your knee over your toe to a certain extent without that arch dropping. However, if you see what's happening here, I'm just going to end up getting stuck and feel a pinch in the front of my ankle, as many people do, because they're not actually getting the foot to move as it needs to. A couple of things need to happen. First, the tibia needs to be able to internally rotate and turn in like this, which creates space at the subtalar joint. As this tibia internally rotates, this talus bone right here is going to drop closer to the floor, but also the calcaneus or the heel needs to go into eversion. So this needs to move like so. But in order for the calcaneus to do that, we actually have to have that heel also move forward into plantar flexion as this tibia internally rotates, this joint moves, the subtalar joint, and also that dropping forward of the heel will allow it to go into eversion, and also that's going to open up space for the arch to move and elongate. However, in order for this calcaneus to go into eversion, it also has to go into plantar flexion, which means that it has to roll forward and also in. From the back point, it looks like this is rolling here and also tipping in. And that's the biggest takeaway, because if we're pushing our knee over our toe and we don't see that heel move or roll forward, then we're not getting genuine pronation and dorsiflexion coupling together. Now here's the other thing, and I know the foot is very complex, so I'm trying to keep things pretty simple right now, but pronation is a relative motion. As this goes forward and that arch drops, what happens is the rear foot is going to go into eversion and in, whereas the forefoot is actually relatively going to move out. So it's doing this right here. So while the rear foot goes in, the forefoot actually is relatively doing this, as that rear foot from the back is doing that. This is the biggest mistake people make when they start to do activities where they get the heel to move. So we're going to focus on the inner heel when we push our knee forward in some of these drills I'm about to show you, but that doesn't mean that we're doing this and collapsing the whole ankle down. We should see that arch elongate and that heel move, but not at the expense of us losing contact with the outside foot. Now here's an introductory drill you can do, and I want to give credit to Gary Ward and David Gray as two practitioners who have inspired a lot of these drills.
This is the introductory pronation drill with a heel focus. So to set up for this activity, Connor's going to be in a staggered stance like he is now, and his back foot's big toe is going to be roughly an inch behind the heel of his front foot. So most of his weight in this case is on that back foot, with some of it on his front heel. And what he's going to focus on feeling here is the knuckle of the big toe, pinky toe, and the heel, particularly the outside of the heel on this front foot. So he's going to start in this position where he has his knee locked and he's in plantar flexion. Might feel a little bit of his quad. So to initiate this movement, what Connor's going to do is he's going to have his shin in this plantar flex position, which he is now quad locked. He's going to unlock that knee and shift his knee over his second toe. And all of the weight from his back foot that is coming onto this front foot is going to want to be in this heel. So when he goes through this movement, what he's going to want to feel is his weight shift from his lateral outside heel towards this medial inside heel. And the second Connor feels any of that weight transfer onto this midfoot, forefoot, he's going to stop the motion and go back. Ideally, he wants to stop right before that. The two most common mistakes we're going to see on this drill is that as Connor moves through this movement, the knee is going to dump in way too hard. We want that knee to come in as a result of the tibia IRing and that knee going towards that second toe. The second one is people aren't going to come onto the medial inside edge of that heel. They're going to just stay riding the outside of that heel, that lateral aspect.
If you want a more comprehensive approach, you can check my Lower Limb Foundations program, which has many more exercises designed at improving these functions, as well as the inverse, which is supination and external rotation. And it also has a lot more exercises that strengthen the muscles around the foot, the ankle, and the knee, but also not forgetting the fact that the foot needs to also work with the hip. So you can see it's important to come from a place of plantar flexion and external rotation and move towards that internally rotated, dorsiflexed, and pronated position. We can progress that like this.
To set up for this activity, you're gonna have your feet staggered apart and something to hold on to if you need that rack support. The stagger is going to be about 1 foot length between his rear toe and his heel. To start out, we want Connor's shin to be plantar flexed, where he has this greater angle between his foot and his tibia. That's gonna allow him to move from a place of external rotation into a place of internal rotation as he goes through this pronation drill. What we wanna focus on feeling starting out is the outside edge of that heel, his knuckle of the big toe, and knuckle of the pinky toe. We don't want his toes to be changing color like he's gripping the ground or he has a lot of weight in that forefoot to start out. We want to really be back on that heel. So to initiate this, what Connor's going to do is he's going to turn his hip of the leg that is forward with him. And what that's going to do is it's going to drive the knee forward. It's going to move his weight from the outside edge of this foot towards the inside edge of that heel or his calcaneus and onto the inside ball of that forefoot. And we still want to make sure you can sense his heel throughout this motion. The goal isn't to lose that heel reference or have that heel pop off the ground if this is my heel right here. We want to see pronation of the foot coming down the chain from initiating with that hip. The most common mistake on this drill is people are going to want to press their toes into the ground. Not that knuckle of the big toe, but the toes themselves. So something I might do is when Connor's in this starting position, I might cue him to lift all his toes off the ground, feel those knuckles of the toes with weight, and then gently put his toes back down to feel what it's like to have them unweighted for reference. The other most common mistake is people aren't going to start with this plantar flex shin and with their weight more on the outside edge of that heel, which is more symbolic of what we're going to see in something like heel strike. So that way they're gonna start with this shin that is more forward. If you go forward for me, Connor, they're gonna start already in dorsiflexion with that more negative shin angle, and it's gonna give them less space to be able to move through for this motion. And I would say the last most common mistake is they're going to lean their whole torso forward. And what that's going to do is it's going to shift most of his weight onto that midfoot, forefoot, which isn't what we want. We want that to happen as a result of him turning his hips when he's going through this motion fluidly. If someone's having trouble being able to feel that transition of their weight from their rear foot, midfoot, onto their midfoot, forefoot, and that inside edge of their heel, what we can use is a sock that is rolled up to the thickness of a couple fingers underneath their medial arch. So that's going to be underneath and behind the knuckle of the big toe and right in front of that inside edge of the heel. And what this is going to let Connor do is as he goes down into this pronation drill, it's going to let him feel his weight shift from that outside edge of his heel or his calcaneus onto the inside edge as he compresses that sock into the ground. And then as he goes back out of this motion, he should feel that sock decompress, kind of rise up, and his arch move away from it.